Hello, everybody. Welcome. Been listening to Danny Jones interviewing Neil from Gnostic Informant. Can't recall his last name at the moment. Like Senyak, Senlak, something like this. Fairly interesting. And this is obviously one of the things that's going on with Danny's podcast at the moment, Concrete, is that clearly he's exploring the world around Ammon HIllman. And Neil has a lot of interesting historical perspective and information. Neil is an autodidact. He was not educated like me, right? He's a self-educating person. He follows his passions and his interests. And he became interested in these topics through what he called studying his way out of Christianity, which is a very interesting thing to say. And there's a lot of good information. Neil is very supportive of Ammon's classicism, his Greek scholarship. And one of the things that Neil says is that most of the people that are attacking Ammon's perspectives, I will call them, just basically attack it from the place of, well, no, the agreed upon knowledge, right? The what's you call it? Consensus. By the way, that's basically just like saying with the numbers, with the census. And this is the ad populus rhetorical fallacy. Well, most people think, who gives a flying poop storm what most people think? Let's be really clear. If we go with generalities and generalizations, we're not only going to miss everything important, because what will be overlooked is everything that opposes popular consensus. And in our situation with the moderns, the educational level of the common people, if we take, how would I put this? If we adulterate the pool with the entire scope of the numbers, we're going to find, and we got to include people who are so old their memory doesn't work yet. We also have to include children and stuff who have no formal education to speak of, or not much yet. So if we dilute the numbers with the common people, what you get is basically just stupidity. Like bald, bold, inveterate ignorance, which you can see very commonly in the United States in our political situation. Right? You have two species of catastrophic stupidity, assembling golems in public to war against each other for the sake of what? Has nothing to do with running a country, I'll put it that way. It has a lot to do with lining pockets and sustaining lineages of socio-political, economic, war, prison, power, backroom power exchanges. The currying of favor and favor trading and so on, which is the opposite of what a democracy should be about. In any case, one of the things that was bothering me is that both Neil and Danny with all due respect, Danny is catastrophically naive about anything relating to spirituality. I'm pretty sure he's an atheist, and it's, Danny asks Neil if he's religious, and he just says anything but. So Neil is also, hopefully my wind buffer is going to work here. I did test it a bit. So Neil is also what? I'm not gonna say he's an atheist. As far as I can tell, he's anti-metaphysical. He doesn't believe there's anything like souls or spirits or gods or daimons or angels or anything. And I'm reminded of experts on fishing who've never held a rod. Right? And this analogy turns out to be really important here in all kinds of ways. They've never seen a fish. They live in the desert. They don't believe in fishes. Fishes are a story that crazy people tell. And the crazy people are so insane that these desert dwellers, and these aren't like the Bedouins who actually have wisdom and stuff. These are idiots. These are people who live in a world of their own suppositions, having no experience of the things that they speak of. This is what I was talking about in my recording about knowledge and writing and the problem that produces. It also produces amazing possibilities of learning and the exchange of the transfer of knowledge on a broader scope than person to person by song and oral tradition and transfer. That's true, it does do that, but it comes with very lethal dangers, and historically the humans tend to ignore the dangers of their new technologies. And then what happens is the structures of power, the understructure, the sort of malignant understructures of power and wealth and rape and torture and lying and, not the good kind of lying, not theoria. No, the kind of lying that leads to the immiseration of thousands or millions of people over epochs of time, that kind of lying. This all gets supported by this process. So what we have here are people, I can't really speak much about Danny Jones, and it's not my intent to insult him or to be disrespectful, but it's clear by just from listening to him, he sounds like an 11-year-old kid, knowing absolutely nothing about the topic. And look, he's interviewed a good, I don't know what his numbers are, but a good probably 500 or 1,000 people, very deep minds, very rich intelligences. Strangely, his own intellect appears largely immune to these intelligences. And I find it tragic. This is the problem with the claim of knowledge, right? These people are talking, I don't care what they believe, and they're welcome to believe whatever they like or disbelieve whatever they like. They're talking about things they have no experience of. Just like people in the desert who make up stories and say, those people who say, there's these people in the West, right? And they say that you can go to the end of the world, and if you go there, you will see the great water that fills the whole horizon. Those people are insane. It's not possible for there to be great waters like that. There's no chance of it being true. Right? Water as far as you can see to the horizon, all the way around you. Those people those are drunkards and silly people. They're just making shit up. Right? Which is effectively what they're saying. They're saying, Neil studies the origins of religion, we might call it. And he's an interesting cat, and he has a lot of name-based, date-based, place-based he's got this sort of, like you see on those detective shows, right, where there's a wall where all of the sort of major players and situations and the timeline is there, and there's a web of red threads between all the stuff. Neil's mind is a bit like this, which is super cool, I mean, for all it's worth, in terms of trying to understand classicism. What happened in the ancient world? Where did we get, did the Masoretic text come before the Greek Septuagint or vice versa, and why, and so forth? And Neil's defending Ammon primarily by saying that his detractors cite consensus. Well, the consensus is, obviously, that the Masoretic text precedes the Greek. But when you look at the actual numbers, at least from some of the people that Neil has been interviewing, some of whom are lifelong scholars of these matters, these are not trivial idiots, these aren't political theorists, okay, who, I think, nope, it's nothing like that. These are people who've spent their entire lifetime studying in the archives, in universities, and all around the world, some of them probably even in the Vatican libraries, which must be catastrophically astonishing. Many of these people think that we should ask questions about the texts and their origins. So he's defending some of what Ammon is saying, and also by saying that the people who are trying, by saying that the people who are trying to refute Ammon are not citing much. They're really just saying, well, the consensus has long been. Particularly if you see on YouTube, there's some ridiculously titled video, Ammon HIllman debunked. Wow, what a load of bullshit that is. There's no debunking of Ammon. First of all, you can't debunk a human being. Let's just be really clear. Ammon HIllman exists. So, the text is already stupidifyingly, the video is already stupidifyingly titled, just insane. You can't debunk a human being. Ammon HIllman debunked. What are you debunking? You're debunking your own intelligence in language. So what you can debunk is a claim, not a human being. Let's be really clear about that. That little 10-minute video, can't recall, don't even care to recall, the name of the guy who, obviously a friend of Dan McClellan's, who has his panties in a bunch about HIllman. And I would argue doesn't even understand, has no chance of understanding what HIllman's doing, because what HIllman is doing isn't history of religion. It's related. It's related. And it has an influence in that domain. But what HIllman's doing is magical. It's not scholarly. There's features of it that are academic and scholarly. He's drawing on his education as a classicist and his fascinations, particularly with ancient Greek, Galen, Nonus, others. Everywhere there's these machines, even in the park, the gardens, driving machines around. In any case, what HIllman is doing is initiatory. He's time traveling. It's like he's opening up a window to a lost world inside himself. He's opening up this window, this portal, if you will, and he's transporting us back. He's giving us it must be must be a word for this, where where you are in time is flipped around and exchanged for another place in time. That's what Hillman is up to in his paramaniacal dissertations on the Bible and the actual origins of what's in the Bible, particularly the New Testament, but not merely that. And, Hillman's been accused of various kinds of nefarious activities. I don't know what the verity of those activities might be. Basically, he was specifically accused, apparently, by some feature of the Catholic Church of summoning demons and, quote, opening portals, unquote. Which, he's definitely opening portals. And if he's summoning daimons, it's not the thing like, oh, Beelzebub, come give me power. That's not what's going on at all. He's trying to understand. He's trying to see what the origins of the often absurdly ridiculous things we believe in modernity, how did we get this stupid? He's trying to understand the history of these situations, which are mysteries. And when he uses the word history, he doesn't mean a record of what happened. He means to inquire of those with actual knowledge, intimate knowledge, the kind of knowledge you have of your lover's mouth when you kiss them, that kind of knowledge. The kind of knowledge you have of a fruit when you eat it, that kind of knowledge. Direct, somatic, visceral, spiritual, originary experience. Not thinking, not opinions, not ideas. And he doesn't give a flying fuck about consensus. Nothing. Does not care. In fact, he will blatantly declare that this consensus thing is completely delusional. Nothing there at all. He often yells, he will yell out, everything you think, all those thoughts you have, all those ideas, all the stuff you've been taught, all of that, nonsense. And then he'll go off camera and you'll hear spanking sounds. Now look, nobody has to authorize Hillman, right? You don't have to bow to him. He's not running around saying, worship me, I am the truth and the light. What he's saying is, if you want a taste of the ancient world that's much more like what was almost certainly going on than what you've been told, we will go together using the ancient Greek as a vehicle of travel. Travel in what? Travel in pneumaticon, in the phrenes. Travel in the strands, the threads, the tributaries of our own origins, our minds, our consciousness, our awareness, our souls, the spectral body, the soma pneumaticon of the Greeks. He will spin that up and take us far beyond anything we've ever been exposed to. For those who want to go. It's an opt-in thing. He's not telling the world what to believe or the scholars, but he will openly laugh at them and, piss in their faces happily, joyfully, playfully. Because what they've been trained to think, they're doing the same kind of thing that they like to accuse him of. They're very selectively picking certain senses of certain words that match up not with history, not with the consensus of primary sources, which consensus HIllman may well authorize. No, they are doing the same thing. They're excluding what they don't want to hear. Quote, why did HIllman have to exclude all references to recreational drugs from his dissertation when that was, when the use of drugs by the Romans was probably the primary focus of his PhD dissertation, right? Why was he told to exclude these? Because it was said by the gatekeepers of the institution, the Romans would not do this. What? The Romans were doing this. Of course they were doing this. We do this. Every people who have ever lived have done this. And what is this? We use intoxicants, and sometimes psychedelics, and other kinds of sedatives, and other things. And not all of us, but if you experience anesthesia in the surgery, this is what he's talking about. So, his detractors are doing the same thing. Yep. They're promoting specific senses of words in Greek and or Hebrew, and they are ignoring the senses that don't agree with their pre-existing narratives and biases, many of which are ridiculously what's the right word? McDonaldized. Right? Jack in the Bible. Ized. So, frankly, I think it's weird when people like Danny opine on religious topics or metaphysical topics. If Danny has, I don't know his whole history, right? I don't pay a lot of attention to him, but if he has any direct experience of metaphysical, the world outside what you are thinking with your representational cognition, which, let's face it, is 99% of the universe, right? I mean, 0.999, right? Like, basically everything isn't what you like to think, is the truth of reality. Of what that which is, we might call it, all that is. And Danny's over there trying to think his way through that. Good luck, Dan. You're using the fingernail of your pinky for something that needs to become the palm of your hand and replace your representational cognition for you to understand it. In other words, they're literally arguing about people being possessed and laughing about it, him and Neil, neither of whom apparently believe in possession, which I think is hilarious because clearly Ammon, it seems very clear to me, and I'd love to ask him questions about this, but if Ammon himself has not experienced various kinds of possession, particularly by his muse, the dead girl he talks about when he says he has a cheat in the sacred, in the podcast by, quote, the sacred speaks, unquote. When he talks about this dead girl who resurrects the ancients before him one by one so that he may inquire directly of them, if he's not experiencing something resembling possession, I'd love to know what it is that he is experiencing. And these two young men who know nothing of what they're talking about, apparently. And by the way, you can disbelieve something to such a degree that it either kills you or blinds you, right? In the same way that you can believe something to such a degree that it kills you or blinds you. You can disbelieve that food is nourishing and die of inanition. Right? You can disbelieve that you need water. You don't need water. Dead, 34 days later, if not sooner. You can say there's no objective evidence for love. That's just something people made up to amuse themselves. Okay? You won't have any experience of love. There are certain features of being human, and I would argue that many, if not most of the features of being human are like this, where if you decide that they don't exist, you become incapable of participating in them, right? And unless something comes and overwhelms your blatant ignorance, it's a word I'm looking for that I can't quite find. Unless something comes and just overwhelms you, right, and takes you over, which, by the way, is pretty much, and I'm not recommending the use of psychedelic drugs here, but that's what happens when one does psychedelic drugs. Either nothing happens, which is what happened to me the first 8 or 9 times I smoked weed. Nothing happened. Similarly, my friend Alan Steinfeld, when we were talking the other day, he was like, the first time I looked at a television, it was just incoherent. I couldn't tell what the hell that was or what was going on there. And he's right. It's because the form of our cognition, this idea that the crazy people have, that what your mind reveals to you is what exists. And what it doesn't reveal doesn't exist. That is impossible. There's no chance of that being true. Because what actually happens is that the mind reforges its own anatomy in order to reveal or occlude features of potential, relation, history, future, possibility. And if the mind has never taken on a particular form before, it doesn't know what to do with the information. And so it may generate, literally, it may just knock you out. I've had direct experience of this with things that other people think are completely ordinary and happen all the time. Your first experience of eating food with your mouth that wasn't just milk was probably like this. Your first experience of standing up was like this. My first experiences of relation, erotic relation with women in my teens were so like this that it was like going to another universe. Right? So this idea that you're the arbiter of identity, function, situation, circumstance, and you just declare, what's happening and what isn't. You can go ahead and play the game of consciousness that way. Neil, Danny, go ahead. Be my guest. You're going to miss out on most of what it means to be human. And from your weird little isolated castle or your dungeon of naivete, you're going to make ex cathedra declarations that you think other people are just either having us on or they're good actors. I mean, this is what the left hemisphere would say about everything that it doesn't originate, grip, control, and also anything that would threaten its supremacy in consciousness. And by the left hemisphere, what do I really mean? I don't mean the left cerebral hemisphere. What I mean is certain features that we know have an intimate relation with that hemisphere from having done experiments with stroke victims and from having done the WADA test, where we anesthetize one of the hemispheres, then we ask the person questions and we can talk to them later about their experiences and so forth. We know that there are faculties there are faculties that representational cognition relies fundamentally upon, and these faculties are tyrannical. You can see them in actual tyrants. You can see them all spun up in people like Mr. Trump and other tyrannical, nightmarish folks from history who probably need not be named here. So there's this aspect, again, it's like the fingernail on your pinky, or the tip of your pinky screaming at the rest of the hand, "You don't exist! I have never seen a ghost! There's no such thing as possession!" I mean, that's the hilarious irony, is these people who say, there's no such thing as possession. Okay, really? Because you are possessed by an array of faculties that are declaring that, and you are unaware of your possession, and think that what you have is the antithesis or opposite of possession, when there's no chance that's true. No chance. The irony here is 10 miles thick. You're possessed by a tiny little array of your cognitive faculties, a little tiny island, an archipelago in consciousness. And that archipelago is saying, anything that's not from around here doesn't exist. Those other islands have ocean, stuff like that. No, it's not there. Right? There is no boatman. Right? Boats are a fantasy, dreaming thing. You know. Someone very close to me last night was arguing fiercely that romantic love was just an invention made up by poets, you know, that everyone decided was a good idea afterwards. He's not entirely wrong, but neither is he correct, because the mind can reforge its anatomy. And under some circumstances, that can be extrinsically, not exactly forced, but very forcefully catalyzed, right? And so this is really important to understand. If you are a person like Danny or Neil who thinks they know things about what it means to be human, what's real and what's not real, you don't. You're wrong. You're using the point. It's like you're using one book in a library, or one angle of a sphere to determine what is true, real, good, veritable, trustworthy, and so forth. You know, Alan Steinfeld, who I recently did a beginning interview with, spoke about his first experience with a trance channel, and he said in the interview, you know, I met this man, and I thought, okay, either A, he is psychotic, B, he's a really, really good actor, or C, and this is the voice of the left hemisphere's incredible doubt and skepticism, or C, maybe. He said maybe like 12 times. Maybe. There's something going on here that I don't understand. And then later, Alan's a very intelligent, well-educated person. And then, so then later he was at a performance where this, actually I can't remember if I think it's a woman who is the channel, and she channels an ancient warrior. His name is something like Ramfa, something like this. This channel is very famous, one of the first trance channels. He was at a performance. The channel picked him out of the audience, pointed at him. He very reluctantly, so said, "You mean me?" Right? Like, are you talking to me? And the channel said yes, in very elaborate, ancient, pre-Shakespearean English. Right? It said, "Yes, my beloved, you know." And Alan had a full-on, suddenly, very, very rapidly, the whole tableau changed. He said that the theater filled with a kind of, I'm paraphrasing here, like a glowing mist, and he rose kind of out of his body, and they embraced, and he had this experience unlike anything he'd ever had before. And, you can argue whatever you like. It's hypnosis, blah, blah. I wasn't there. I didn't see that. It's just hearsay. Go ahead. Be my guest, right? You can argue the same thing about the flavor of food, right? The experience of you're not seeing red. That's just, blah, blah, blah. Make up any noises you like. You can make all the face noises you want. And you can have all of the critical left hemispheric refutations. Be my guest. You're welcome to have them. You're wrong. You're just dead wrong. You're missing the thing you're using to determine what is real is only useful in a very, very tiny scope of human experience, nature, being, thought, awareness, consciousness, all these things. Very tiny scope. It's very useful if you want to tell, is that pot hot or cold? Very useful there. How many coins are in my pocket? Very useful there. Beyond its applicable scope, those faculties are lethal to understanding. They crucify it. They basically just, rip out its organs and spray them on the wall. So if you think that you know what's going on based on your rationality, you not only don't know what's going on, you're like a bird that thinks only this one feather on my wing, on my left wing, or in this case my right wing, because birds are similarly lateralized to us. Only this one feather can I trust, which guess what that means? That means that you will never fly, and you're a bird. You're born to be skyborn, right? You're born for the wind to just lift you up, right? Into the atmosphere, into the sunlight, to dance with the clouds. Right? This is what you're born for. And you're really focused on this one feather. You're like, well, I've never seen anything incline me to believe blah, 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 blah. Okay, good luck. And everybody's, lots of us start out there. The problem is some of us finish there. And I have my own biases and perspectives. I've experienced delusion. I've also experienced mantic insight, paranoia, grandiosity. Yes, I've had these experiences. And of course we want to be protected from them. We don't want our buffers so permeable that anything gets in, and that's part of why rationality reigns supreme, is because we're really afraid of the contagion of madness. Okay, I get it. But there's other approaches that allow us to explore our nature, our origin, our intelligences, our creativity, our participatory transcendence. Yeah? And this is very crucial that we have these experiences. So we need a buffer against, having the membrane completely ruined by nonsense, which is conceivable. But we still need a trustworthy and worthy array of incitements, maps, teachers, mentors, and perhaps daimons to lead us out of the prisoneering cage of mere rationality. That's it for now. More soon. Thank you for joining me. May your paths be beautiful and your relationships loving and your dreams amazing. Bye-bye for now.